Hi guys, it's Mo from Mo Reads It, and today we're doing the Contradictions tag. So I was happily tagged in this by Sears. The creator of this tag is Daniela, and I think this is my second tag I've done on my channel so far. I am very excited to do this tag. I actually filmed it a long time ago, and when I was looking back at the footage, it was utter trash. So we're here refilming it once more. And pretty much this tag is all about bookish contradictions. So the bookish contradiction tag has 9 questions. The first one being, I love this genre, but I did not like the book. For this one, I don't have a specific book that really comes to mind right now. I have like a list of books that probably fall into this category though. I am a fantasy romance reader. That is where my heart lies. That's just the genre that I enjoy reading the most of. So, I'll have to say, I love this genre, but I didn't like this book. Falls for every single book I've ever said is a horrible side piece romance. Some authors do side piece romances well, and what I mean by side piece romance is the plot and the romance. For a fantasy romance, I believe there should be equal romance, equal fantasy. But typically, for some fantasy romance books, it'll be mostly plot, side piece romance. Like the romance is only touched on softly and it's not dived in deep enough, for my personal preference. A fantasy romance that is true to me is a fantasy romance that has both plot and romance as the main driving point of the story. So because of that, I do not like a side piece romance. I feel like if a book is advertised as a fantasy romance, I expect fantasy and romance at equal capacities in the book. Not, oh my gosh, all this fantasy, all this world building, and like a trickle tinkle dinkle of the romance. I don't like that. It bothers me. I feel like those books should be marketed differently, so fantasy hardcore romancers like me can buy books that we actually have the right expectations for. Question number 2. I rarely read this genre, but I love this book, and I think that's true to say about Only a Monster by Vanessa. So this is more contemporary urban fantasy-like, and for those who don't know, I don't like contemporary writing that much. I find it boring. I want to read and live in a magical world where there's magic and elves and fairies and people flying around the world. That is the place I want to be at. Contemporary just is kind of boring to me. Everyday life is just so normal. So when I read, I want to read about things that are not close to or even has reference to necessarily everyday pop culture or everyday life. This book references everyday pop culture as well as everyday life situations. Even though it's a fantasy book, it's such an urban fantasy, it's very contemporary. And I was surprised that I even liked this book. It came into one of my fairy loot boxes, and even when I was unboxing this, when I read the little blurb, that was like a contemporary fantasy book, I was like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna like this, but I actually really like this. I gave it 4 stars when I read it. I did a whole book talk on it if you want to check it out. But I feel like how interesting the plot was kept me in this book. And it's building itself to have a good romance story in it, so I'm excited to read the sequel to it. I look forward to it a lot. If the ending didn't end the way it was going to be a 3-star book for me, which is, it's okay. But because of it ended such a interesting way, I decided that it was a 4-star book. The ending projected it into the 4 stars. And the next book that I think adequately describes this question is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I am not a contemporary romance person, and I've realized recently that I like to listen to contemporary romance, but overall, I like it as background noise. So it's not something I deeply care about. It's not something I aspire to read more of necessarily. Like, I like to read it more as like a palate cleanse or like a refresher or just something light and fun. But I don't put time and energy into reading contemporary romance because I just don't care about it. I feel like Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover was a very different contemporary romance. This book actually had suspense in it, and I loved the backstory more than the main story. I have a book talk about this coming out soon, but long story short, I enjoyed this book not because of the contemporary romance part, but because of how suspenseful the contemporary romance was. I feel like the suspense is what drove me to enjoy this book more than I did, and it helped me glaze over how contemporary and real world it was by having that need to know more page turner suspense with it. So I really enjoyed that. Outside of this, I have never really liked a contemporary romance. I liked Get a Life Chloe Brown because it is hilarious. And the audiobook really just drove it home for me. The audiobook is so funny. If you're gonna read Get a Life Chloe Brown, get the audiobook from your library. It just elevates the experience. But even after reading that book, I always had this feeling, whenever I read contemporary romance in general, that I have this empty, gawing feeling inside of me that's like, that wasn't enough. It wasn't what you wanted. It didn't fill the place. It wasn't satisfactory. It didn't fill that place inside of you that reads, that wants to read. So I always got that feeling when I read contemporary romance until Ugly Love. So on to question 3 and 4, which is very odd for me because I feel like I haven't gotten to this place of my reading journey just yet. And if I have, I don't remember a book that falls under these categories. The question for question 3 is, I love this trope, but I didn't like this book. When I got this question, I really wasn't sure what book to put here. I kept pondering it and thinking on it, but I couldn't think of any. Same thing for number 4. They're very similar. I hate this trope, but I love this book. So far, I don't feel like I've really gotten to a place where I have not DNF'd a book where I just wasn't liking what was happening in it. Like most books I will DNF, or another reason I feel like I can't adequately answer this question is because I haven't read that many tropes and identified them. So I probably have read a bunch of different tropes, but I never like sat down and consciously thought, oh, it's that trope or it's that trope. I didn't really start thinking of tropes until I started BookTube and started diving deeper into tropes I liked. Before this, I mostly just did like fantasy romance as a general bubble, and I would just find books inside the genre that I enjoyed, or books that other people recommended to me. I love book recommendations because I don't like looking for books. I like them to be presented to me on a silver platter, and I just go and buy them and enjoy them. Looking for books is also very tediously annoying. That's why I love BookTube's book recommendations, because I don't have to physically or even mentally hard look for books, like look up reviews and then cross-reference the reviews with reviewers I trust, and it's a lot of work. Social media has made life so much simpler in that aspect. But then again, there's the other side of that conversation where everyone's just recommending everything and anything because it's shiny, new, and novelty, or everything's overhyped. So a lot of things these days are becoming overhyped in like the BookTube world or the book talk world. And I think partly it's because like some people just feel very passionately about a book, and that passion is contagious to others, and they also overhype it, and then it just becomes this thing, like when you read it, you're just like, I am so disappointed. This was nothing that I expected it to be. Like, I know people genuinely love Blood and Ash, but I genuinely dislike it. It was one of my worst books of 2021, and I only read it because of like, it's a fantasy romance, and the hype around it was phenomenal. People were like going crazy over this book, and I was just like, okay, at that point in my BookTube journey, I was really into going into books blind, so I didn't find out much about it before I read it. I was just like, it has fae, it's in a magical universe, it's a fantasy romance, good, we're good, I will read that. I disliked this book so much that I read it and I just could not understand why so many people love this book. I was so bamboozled. I couldn't believe it. Like, I was just like, is this what people really like now? And then part of me was just like, maybe the series gets better. Like, maybe it's just gonna like, you know how like the first book is like, meh, and then after that it's like, amazingness throughout the series. That wasn't the case with Blood and Ash. Everyone I talked to who read the series also did not like the book, or used to like it and no longer likes it anymore, talked to me in real life and they're like, yeah, the books actually get worse after that one and more confusing, and the plots become really weird and the writing becomes kind of info dumpy and repetitive. And I was just like, what? It gets worse than this? And this was bad. This was just like, I couldn't believe this. So the hype around Blood and Ash, I still don't understand it. I still don't get it. It's fine. It's not meant for me. It's not my fantasy reader type book. But I know there's a whole genre of people who love and adore it, and that's okay. So I say all this to say, I think some books are overhyped because people genuinely love it and their passion is contagious. And then books are overhyped because they're just talked about so much that they're just milked down by a lot of people, and then when other people read it, they realize like it's just not for me. And I feel the same thing about Six of Crows. A lot of people love Six of Crows. I do not. I know a lot of people are gonna come for me because it was also one of my worst books of 2021. But I'm not a Six of Crows person. My friends love Six of Crows. I am like one of the only people who just thought it was boring and I didn't care about it. Put me in a horrible reading slump, by the way. And I realized, you know what? It's just not my type of book. And that's okay. Same thing with Blood and Ash. It's not my type of book. Even though it falls into all my categories, fae, fantasy romance, magical world building, it's just not my type of book. And that's okay. Not every fantasy romance book will be Monique's fantasy romance book. And that's all of my soul. Next question, number 5. I love this author, but I did not like this book. And that is very true and well for Cassandra Clare's Lady Midnight. If you've ever read Infernal Devices and share my passion and love for that series like I do, you will know. I love Cassandra Clare, not for Mortal Instruments, which, I'm not gonna lie to you, high school Monique loved Mortal Instruments. As I've grown older and reread this series, I don't love it as much as I used to. It's now like fallen in ranks. But little child Monique loved that book. That series overall. And only the first 3 books of the series. The other 3 kind of just went off on tangents that I couldn't care for. I love how like construction work always begins when I'm filming. Anyway. I have no clue when they're gonna stop. Sometimes they go at it all day long, so we're just gonna keep filming. I do love Infernal Devices and the Last Hour series. I am happy for Mortal Instruments because it laid the groundwork. It did the work for the prequel and the sequel to the prequel of Infernal Devices. So that is why I like Cassandra Clare as an author. Even though Mortal Instruments was okay, Infernal Devices and Last Hours are kind of amazing, I did not like the Dark Artifices trilogy. Lady Midnight was the beginning of it, and it just didn't do it for me. And I think partly is because I do not like Emma as a character. Like, Clary was annoying, but I feel like Emma is just extra annoying and somewhat dull to me. I just feel like she just comes off not enticing to me at all. And I don't know why, because like I try to connect with her, but I feel like I cannot. And maybe one day I'll reread this and I'll connect to her more, but I actually love the Blackthorns. I just don't like Emma. And for those who don't know, this is mostly written from her point of view, so it's kind of annoying when you're trapped in the person's point of view that you don't actually care about. So I love this author, but I did not like this book. I actually DNF'd this years ago when it first came out because I could not deal with Emma in my head for that long. And I don't know why so many people love Emma. Like, out of all of the Cassandra Clare, Shadowhunter heroines, everyone's like, Emma is like top dog, she's amazing, yada yada yada. And I'm just like, Tessa? Cordelia? Sophie, Isabel, Charlotte. Like, I feel like there are so many other better women in the Shadowhunter world than Emma, but a lot of people love her. She's a fan favorite. She's not a fan favorite for me. I don't know why. I just couldn't connect with her. Oh well. Question number 6. Previously, I disliked a book by this author, but I love this book, and I feel like that is Leigh Bardugo. And that book is Crooked Kingdom. So for those who don't know, I just have issues with the Shadow and Bone world. Specifically, Shadow and Bone, the entire trilogy, put me in a reading slump. 6 of Crows, put me in a reading slump. The only book that didn't do it was Crooked Kingdom. It was very disappointing. I haven't read Ninth House. I would like to read it because they say it's very different from her other works, so maybe I'll like that one more. I don't know. But I like Crooked Kingdom. I haven't read the Chole duology yet, The Rule of Wolves and The King of Scars. Haven't read that yet. I really want to, but we haven't gotten to it yet. And that's the whole reason I read 6 of Crow, honestly. Because Chole is my favorite character. I feel like he carried the Shadow and Bone world, even though he wasn't even in the first book. And honestly, I feel like he's gonna carry the series. I really hope King of Scars and Rule of Wolves is good because I love Chole. He's like my favorite character. He's the only character I really like, actually. And in this book, I did start liking Kaz and NJ and like Nina and Ete, but that took like a whole end of the series until I got to the last book. Question number 7. I love this cover, but I dislike the book, The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. This cover is gorgeous, so is the original cover, and I want to say I don't remember what edition it is, but I'll put it up here. It's a beautiful cover. The covers are beautiful. And this was supposed to be a Korean mythology retelling. I expected more from this book. I did a whole book talk on it of my reasons why. I still gave it, I think, a 3.9 4-star-ish review because of how the story played out, but I didn't like it. It is going to become one of my books I eventually unhaul from my collection, but it didn't do it for me. But the cover is so pretty! I've been really into the mythology and retellings type genre, and this is like my 4th or 6th retelling that I read this year. So I really expected it to stand up to the hype of the rest of the books, but it really didn't, and it just fell short for me, which I'm disappointed about. I feel like the book should have been longer. We should have got more in depth with all of the characters. We didn't get in depth with really any of the characters, honestly. And I just wanted more overall. I think overall, the word for this book is more. The sentence would be, I need more. And so on and so forth. Number 8. I don't like this cover, but I love the book. This is totally Shatter Me by Tagereh Mafi. I was supposed to read this book years ago when it had a different cover. It was a girl with the white dress and yada yada yada. This cover now has like this huge eye on it, and I do not like this cover. I don't like a giant eye on the books just staring at you like intensely, and all the books are like that in the series now. They're just a bunch of eyes on book covers. And yes, did I still buy the special edition book? Yeah, but I don't like the cover. I like the story. The story's good. It's a 4-star book, which I think is going to become a 5-star series later on, but I do not like the cover at all. I don't know, maybe I just don't like eyes on like everything, like the whole series has to have eyes on it. 2, like the eyes are intense. They're not like chill eyes or like docile. They're very much like in your face eyes. But I know a lot of people actually really love this cover. It's not for me though. And number 9, I'm supposed to tag someone for number 9, and for those who don't know, I am recently new to the booktube world. I really don't know many people, so the only 2 people I know are the only 2 people I can tag. So, Layla loves lit. And, oh darn, I can't tell you, Leigh Sears, because you're the one who tagged me. Well, check out Leigh Sears' YouTube video on the Contradictions tag as well. She'd be the other person I would tag, but she's the one who tagged me, so I cannot tag her back. And other than that, if you want to do this video, do it. Life is short, have fun, make cute little silly YouTube videos and put them up on the internet. Enjoy it. I wasn't tagged in the next tag I really want to do, but I'm still gonna do it just because it looks fun, and I don't think my social circle is going to expand between now and next week, so I might as well do it anyway to have the memories in my heart and have the joy there for the rest of my life until my book circle grows. Happy reading. I love y'all. By the way, when I do tag people, it is totally up to them if they want to do the tag. I don't want anyone to feel pressured to do something that they're not inspired to do, so feel free to not do the tag if that is you, because I know sometimes it just doesn't mesh well with your current like creative vision. So if anyone ever doesn't want to do a tag and I tag them, it is totally fine. I will not be offended, trust me. Because I'm a mood reader and because I think I'm just a mood person in general, if I don't want to do something, it probably won't get done unless it absolutely positively has to happen, like going to work or something like that. But outside of that, I try not to force myself to do things that are in 20 years I won't care about. So like, in 20 years, will I care if I miss like 7-8 months of working out? Yeah, probably, because I'll have to make up for that time, yada yada. Or in like 7 to 20 years, will I care if I didn't make that YouTube video? And I'll be like, I probably won't even remember, nor will I care. So good way to think about life. Keeps my priorities straight. Okay, bye guys.